I first want to thank you, Representative Cootie and Nolan, for the special education information that came out today. I am a special ed teacher myself, have been certified 30 years by the State Department of Ed, learning disabled and mentally handicapped areas, as well as K through 8 standard elementary ed. So all of the talk about testing and student performance and why are we testing? What do we want to know from testing? Why are we testing and what are we testing? And who decides? I guess that's another good question. Well, right now we better answer up front. Who decides? We've got a federal law, No Child Left Behind. I concur with a number of people today who said, why don't we fight that federal law, No Child Left Behind? We've got a big problem there. It's driving all of us in circles with a lot of this. The testing has become ludicrous for special ed students. I believe Claudia and I were talking earlier. She's taught special ed as well. And I knew up front when I heard the law that it didn't make sense. How is every child going to meet that standard of proficiency at any point in the future? Because they're not all the same as students. I mean, how ludicrous is that? I've also had profoundly retarded children in my classroom. It's cruel to sit them down in front of a test that you know they can't take. And even some of the higher functioning students, autistic. I was director of testing under No Child Left Behind in one of our rural Oklahoma schools. I was the special ed department. I wore all the hats, LD, mentally handicapped, autistic, all, and went through the, training for all the other areas of exceptionality as well to do that. But I had an autistic student that was a handful. He was pretty much a full-time job by himself. And, a great kid. He could tell you a cartoon front to back, every word that was said. I would type out what he told me, and that was his story. He wrote a story because he said it orally, and I typed it and read it back, and it would be word for word, a 30-minute program. He had a lot of abilities, but when he sat down to take that special ed, that test as a special ed student, that state test, he was required to sit in that seat for a period of time, for a long period of time, and we had to time it, whether he could do one bit of it or not. So a lot of this is ludicrous, and I say the look at this norm reference test, which is available now. It's a valid instrument. It's an instrument that's been proven. We're not doing an experiment here, okay? This is a valid test, and it can include our criterion referenced items, which we have now, 2010 pass, our standards. It can include those in a customized package. So we can actually see if students are meeting the standards where they are now. And in 2016, when we have our new standards produced through this process that we have in rewriting, then those standards can be incorporated. It's a customized test. Now, I don't know the number figures on the cost, but it's a great deal less expensive. Do you have that, Ellis? Any just general ballpark? Without
knowing the specifics of the customization, the Iowa test can be delivered for $15 in the program, $15 per child in the program that Scott just described.
Okay, well, the type of testing that we've got, we are contracted, I believe, still with Measured Progress. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, what type of test Measured Progress is producing. We are under contract for $34.45 million for a year, and I believe it's a 5-year agreement, but it has to be renewed. However, it's a Common Core test that we're contracted to right now. So by law, with our passage of House Bill 3399, that needs to be canceled. That contract needs to be canceled, and we need a test that is not Common Core aligned, according to House Bill 3399. What type of test? Measured Progress and a number of other companies that have really come up and become, really in the national spotlight with their testing programs. AIR, American Institute for Research, Pearson, and of course we've been through Pearson in the past, but I'm talking about now with the new Common Core type testing. These tests are not cognitive only. In teaching, we have what is called Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive and the affective domain. As a special ed teacher, and all teachers actually have this training, to look and find the objective that you're teaching the student. Before we had standards set, as we do now, you choose the objective for that student, or the goal, the standard, so to speak, and you write that into the plan. Well, the choices as a special ed teacher included cognitive, which is facts, knowledge, information, academics, and affective, which is emotions and feelings, attitudes, values, and beliefs. That is the affective domain, which we all have. We are a whole human being. So the idea of the whole child being tested has always only been in special education. And that has been with children that have behavioral problems, with parental consent, because everything's done, as we've discussed here today, through an IEP team, including the parents. So it's not a testing of things outside of academics without parental consent. But what we have going on the national level, and I've just come back from Alabama and Florida, where I've spoken with teachers and parents across the states, northern part of Florida and throughout Alabama. And it's the same thing. In every state where we see these testing companies come in with their assessments that are not just cognitive. And I think we've been talking past each other a lot in the conversation about Common Core standards, Common Core testing, because really everyone I know wants good standards for our children. Parents want their children to learn as much as possible, and teachers want their students to succeed. I mean, if we have some really poor teachers, poor quality, just like any profession, we need to, within our profession and within our regulations and accountability, make sure we take care of those problems. But we don't need to condemn the whole profession of educators, and know that educators who are good educators, and we've heard many here today, they know that if they're not working with their child, their student, at a level where that student is succeeding and yet being challenged, they're not doing their job. And I'll tell you, it's not much fun to just go sit in a classroom all day. I can't imagine someone that wants to do that for a living. I would rather be seeing the results. And so why are we testing, and what are we testing? We need to test to benefit the student, to benefit their learning, to benefit the process of education. And that information needs to come back to the teacher, to the student, to the parents, to the administrators, or whoever is involved in that school setting with that child. But that data does not need to go into a state longitudinal data system to be shared with who knows who, what entities. In New York, they had some in a cloud, a lot of data about students through this type of testing. It even had the affective domain, emotions, feelings, attitudes, values, and beliefs information, and it got lost. It was leaked out, it got out, and there have been some real major problems with that. Now, that's not my greatest concern. That can happen with any data in a computer. We know that. My laptop, right now, I try to get off of the internet when I leave it, so I'm not leaving it sitting there online when I'm not there. We know there are problems with security. But the greater problem is, who needs our students' data? Who needs that? What is the purpose of allowing it to be shared across state agencies, even federal agencies? And I'm not saying we're doing that now, but why would we allow that kind of a system to be established? We don't need to be fighting these battles from now on. We need to have local control of education, state standards, state accountability. Yes, I'm not against that at all, but we need to be able to control that within our state, and there aren't many options out there right now. A lot of these big testing conglomerates, I will call them, have eaten up their competition. And if you look at Pearson, I know we're not probably going there. We've had our problems with them already. But if you look at them, there's an article someone wrote and called them the octopus, because they're not only testing their curriculum, they do licensing and certification for a lot of professions. They are really covering the gamut. They've bought Wesley Addison, Scott Forsman, several of the publishing companies. And as I said, I was in Florida. One of the problems there that has been recently dealt with, and because there was local board control, the state board didn't even have to deal with it. The local school board, the county school board, dealt with this. There was a textbook published by Pearson, the Pearson Testing Company, and a U.S. history book. No, it was world history. And it had a complete chapter on Islam, no chapters on Christianity, no chapters on other religions, and it was very biased. And so the local school board dealt with that. Now, this is the type of thing, we don't need to be fighting these kinds of battles with testing that comes with this affective domain attached to it. And we want to make sure what type of testing we're getting. We want it to be academic. We want the higher levels of thinking. And, if we have 10 choices, then we can get 10 bids. But we'll just have to see how many options we have. We just need to know what we're asking in the tests and why, and where that information goes and how we're going to utilize it. But I contend that we're going to have a lot more time to get down to the business of teaching children and learning if we get unhooked from some more of this by getting a good testing vendor. Thank you.